So for your mise en place for your stir fry, you want to have everything ready because it's going to go really fast. And because we're working with a normal gas burner, we want to make sure that we get everything nice and hot and move in batches. So if you come over here, you can see I have my mise en place set up. So here's our beef that we've been marinating for a couple of days in our alkaline marinade. This is our sliced up tri-tip. We have that ready to go. And then as we stir fry it, we're gonna hit the vegetables first. So we have our green onions that we cut up and our regular onions. And our garlic, which we're gonna save to the very end so it doesn't scorch on us. And then once the meat goes in, after the vegetables, we're gonna deglaze with our wine, our chicken stock. We're gonna add fish sauce, soy sauce, and some oyster sauce for our flavor. So we're gonna go ahead and turn this on. So the two mistakes that people make the most when they actually work with a wok at home and stir fry is they don't get the wok hot enough and they don't work in small enough batches. So over here we have 2 plates. This is basically my dump plate right here. So I'm gonna stir fry my green onions, dump. I'm gonna stir fry my regular onions, dump. Then I'm gonna stir fry my meat, dump the onions back into the pot or the wok with the meat, and then I have my presentation plate. Because at this point, with all the dumping and transferring, this plate's gonna look not too good. So we'll get this guy nice and hot, wait for it to come to temp, and go ahead and hit our vent fan as well, preemptively. So also too, here you have your wok spatula, wok ladle. I kind of just am partial to this flat edge wooden spoon, so we're gonna use this guy. A little bit of oil goes in the wok. I'm gonna go around the edge here, let it pool. Swirl around. Green onions go in. And you're gonna be tempted to wanna start tossing this right away, but give it a second, okay? You're not using, if this was a commercial burner, then you would wanna toss right away and move really fast because you have about 100,000 BTUs hitting the bottom of this thing. This burner is probably about 6,000 BTUs. Some really high-end ones are 10 to 15,000 BTUs in the home kitchen. So we got to give this a chance to really char. So the green onions, they hit the hot wok, we let them rest, they char, and here in a second we'll start tossing them around. In the meantime, we'll add just a little sprinkle of kosher salt, just add a little baseline seasoning, and give another couple of seconds. And a little toss. So you can see we already have a nice char right here, and that's going to start our flavor. In Chinese cooking or in wok cooking in general, they talk about the wok hei or the flavor of the hot wok, and it's hard to replicate that at home, but the easiest way to do that is, again, working in small batches and letting the wok heat up. So again, notice how this pan isn't overcrowded. I have almost a singular layer, and this is going to be enough for 4 to 6 servings. Now I'm not looking to actually make these soft. I want my green onions to be nice and crunchy, so I'm going to give them just a couple more seconds in the pan, and I'm going to transfer to our plate. All right, so green onions are done. I'm going to take a paper towel and just wipe this out. And this gets any residual oil that may have started to scorch and burn, and gives me a nice clean surface, which we'll add more oil to and continue with our next round of sauteing. So you can see the pan is already nice and smoking hot, but don't let it fool you. It's still cooled down a little bit from our green onions. So we're gonna give it a second to charge with heat again. So even though it's smoking, we're gonna still let it kind of go. Again, biggest mistake people make when cooking in woks at home is they don't let their pans fully charge in between their cooks, and they cook in 2 larger batches. Oil goes in again, swirl around, chunks of onions go in. Again, your instinct is going to be to start tossing right away, start doing that wok movement, but you're not in a professional kitchen, you're at home, right? So give your pan a chance to have that hot contact with the onions, really smoke, really char. Open a window or something to get the smoke out of your kitchen, but that's what's going to give you that nice charred stir-fried look on your vegetables and on your meats. Again, we're going to hit with a little bit of salt, for the baseline seasoning. And we're going to start our wok movement. A couple of flips. So again, after 30 seconds, you can see we have a nice char. So a couple more tosses. Onions are still nice and crunchy, which is exactly what we want. So this is what we're looking for. Again, that sort of charred brown look. And we're going to go ahead and move this to our dump plate. And no matter what vegetables you're using, this is the process that you want to follow, right? Where you cook them in small batches. Again, if this was a commercial wok, you could get away with adding the ingredients one after the other. But to replicate at home, you want to cook in singular batches. Now, if I was doing something that was a little bit more sturdy, like carrots, celery, green beans, broccoli, something that I wanted softer, I would blanch it first, either by steaming and icing or boiling and icing. We have separate videos on blanching at cellarculinary.com. But that's going to allow you to first set that internal texture that you're looking for, and then you set that char texture on the pickup with the wok. Now, this is just a simple weeknight stir fry. We're going to serve this with some rice. So I got my 2 onions that I like, and I got my tri-tip that's been hanging out in the fridge all week. And again, this is a great way to prep. You slice up your tri-tip or your pork loin or your chicken, doesn't matter. You do the alkaline marinade, and then you can pull off little chunks. You could use half, right? So tonight we'll probably use half this meat, right? We're not going to use all of it, and we'll stir fry up the rest later on in the week. So again, oil goes into the wok. The wok is now nice and hot, smoking. I'm going to take our meat, carefully kind of drop it in the wok. Kind of press it apart a little bit without moving it around too much with this spatula. Now we're going to go ahead and start the wok movement. It's your basic saute movement. And I'm going to break the meat apart as we go, because the marinade had it stick together a little bit. So it's going to break that apart into its individual strands. Now, because there's already salt in the marinade and some soy sauce and some other salty ingredients, we won't be sprinkling this with salt. What we'll do is we'll finish our saute and then taste for final seasoning right at the end. Chances are we won't actually need to add any more salt. But if we do, we'll just add in some salt right at the end. Now, if the meat starts to stick, don't lose your mind. It'll be okay. The meat itself is pretty sturdy, and the wok itself, if it's carbon steel, is pretty sturdy. And what we're doing is we are building up a little bit of a fond like you would see in French cuisine or a lot of Western style cuisines. And we're going to deglaze that in a little bit with our liquids. So right now I'm just looking for color on my meat. Now this meat is very well marinated. It's going to be nice and tender, but there will become a point of diminishing returns where you got to pull the plug, right? So you want to get color on your meat, but again, we're working in a home environment, so I'd rather have meat that was slightly under browned or under charred, but still tender and juicy, than meat that's been hanging out in this pan forever with all its juices steaming away. Now, because we used a little bit of cornstarch in that marination process and coated it, what's happening right now is as this meat steams and the juice tries to release, that juice that's steaming out of the meat is hitting the boiling point and is gelating that cornstarch, and that cornstarch is absorbing that liquid while it gels. So that's giving us a little bit of a moisture barrier and also helping to literally hold those juices in, unlike normal searing. Again, it gives you that little extra 10-15% of juiciness and flavor, but there's no saving truly overcooked meat. So keep an eye on what's going on here. And if you listen, you can actually hear it. It's sizzling more, right? You're not hearing as rapid of a char. And that's because the liquid is coming out of the meat. And so we want to pay attention to those audible cues as well as our visual cues and use your intuition. So right now, as you can see around here, I have some fond building up. I've got some good color on some chunks of meat. So it's looking pretty delicious and stir-fry-y. So now I think we can move on to our next step. So again, when we go to deglaze, we're going to be looking at like these chunks of fond in here. We want to get all this stuff off of our pan and incorporate it into our sauce. And that's going to give us a nice, delicious flavor. So our charred onions are going to go in. Those are going to add some moisture to the stir fry. Go ahead and mix that around. I'm going to add in my garlic now. and cook this garlic. We wait till the end because the garlic has a tendency to burn. So one of the things that's really important about taking your cooking to the next level is, again, paying attention to all of your senses. So those audible cues, those visual cues, but also, of course, that sense of smell. Garlic and ginger, you really time everything by the smell. Okay, so when you first add your garlic in and you smell it, it's gonna be kind of harsh, and you'll feel that harshness up in like your nostrils, okay? And as the garlic continues to cook, it's gonna become more fragrant. Now there will become a point where the garlic smells almost sweet and different from roasted, right? Because roasted, it's a slower cooking process. So here it's gonna go really, really fast. Okay, so it's gonna be harsh and in the high nostrils. Then it's gonna start to smell sweet and kind of toasted a little bit, not so much roasted, but toasted. And then it's gonna hit that point where it smells like burnt, scorched garlic. And when you hit that point, you've screwed up because it's just gonna permeate the smell and the scent and the flavor of your entire dish. So really pay attention to how that garlic is smelling as it progresses through the cooking cycle. All right, so now it's smelling good, it's looking good. Okay, so now we're gonna deglaze a little bit. The process that you deglaze is gonna kind of affect the flavor structure. If we just hop right to our wine or right to our chicken stock, then it's gonna give us a different flavor than if we use the soy sauce first. Now, I actually like the flavor of the soy sauce kind of charring and burning just a little bit. So I'm gonna add the soy in. Okay, that's gonna become my base. And listen for it to kind of sizzle away. Okay, and smell that, and you can see it's already kind of glazing the bottom of that pan there. So now I want to toss that glaze around onto the meat. Now you can kind of smell that rich soy. Now I'm going to add in my Chinese cooking wine. If you don't have this, you can use any sort of wine that you want. Sherry's also work good as well, and just a little splash. And this is going to start the deglazing process. Now, when cooking with wine, you always want to make sure that you reduce it by at least half. But here we're going to reduce it fully. And see, I'm going through, I'm scraping that fond. And you can already see this glaze building up on this meat. And a lot of that is the cornstarch coating that's ever so gently on this meat is starting to absorb this liquid as we move along. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of oyster sauce, just because I like the flavor of oyster sauce. It's going to bring some sweetness and some nice umami. You could also add in some hoisin, which is going to be sweeter. You could add in some hot sauce, whatever you like, right? So I'm going to toss that around. Now I'm going to do a little bit of a final deglaze with this chicken stock. And because this chicken stock's not a big flavor component in this dish, the box stuff is fine. How much? Just enough, right? I mean, again, use your eyes to see what we're doing here. We wanted just enough to kind of deglaze the bottom of this wok here and to finish off our sauce. If you need to add more, you can add a little bit more, but that looks like it's just the right amount. And we're gonna reduce, you can see it thickening, right? And that's because we already have the cornstarch on the meat and it's helping to thicken this sauce. Plus we have our oyster sauce and our soy sauce and other things in there that when you reduce fully, it'll thicken it as well. If you follow me at all, you know I'm a big fan of fish sauce and soy sauce together. So I'm gonna add just a little splash of fish sauce. Not to make it taste fishy, not that I mind that, but in this particular instance, I'm just adding it for the synergistic relationship that it has with the soy sauce and the other umami ingredients in this dish. And it's just gonna make the whole thing more delicious. I'm basically just going to continue to toss this around until that glaze forms. As you can see also too, why we wanted to cook this stuff in batches, because if we had just gone from start to finish without actually batching out our green onions and our regular onions and our meat, then we'd be sitting here with a stew instead of an actual nice stir fry. So now again, listening, you can hear it's not as moist anymore. That moisture is going away, right? So we're paying attention to that audible cue. I'm looking, it's almost done. Couple more tosses. Cool, kill the heat. All right, so now we got our presentation plate. Just a real simple, goes down here like that. And we'll clean up these edges here as well. So then what I like to do is just take a paper towel in a restaurant environment. This would be a glass rag. something that doesn't have a whole lot of lint on it, and we clean the rim. But just a nice paper towel will work fine here, just to kind of clean that up a little bit. And then we have sesame seeds, which are always a nice garnish for a stir fry. So we'll sprinkle just a little bit of this toasted sesame seeds right on top. And then we have the green part of our scallions. Give a nice fresh look. We'll kind of sprinkle on the edge here. And that's it. Very, very simple. Now again, this could be pork, this could be chicken, this could be really any lean cut of meat that you want. And when we taste this guy, you will see, so tender, totally juicy, and a great delicious stir fry. Again, you make this part of your weekly meal prep. It takes a couple of minutes to slice it up, to marinate, to pop in a Ziploc bag. You got 7 days to use it. You can stir fry it up anytime. Relatively healthy ingredients for the most part. Serve this with some steamed rice or some vegetables or some salad, and you got a nice healthy dinner within minutes on the table coming home from work.